But at the same time, you've also got to see that the frontier itself moves. And why does it move? Well, companies invest in capital, they invest in different technologies, and as a result of which the frontier of production moves. It's no longer stable. So the idea is to sort of separate out technical change, and if you're keeping track and you're looking at the picture, technical change is the shift in the frontier. And it comes from changes in technology, changes in processes, etc. Relative efficiency is where you fare with respect to the frontier. So as you start looking at how far you are from the frontier, and you're starting to ask, well, how am I doing with respect to being close to the frontier? So the bottom line here is, across time, if you have a database that allows you to track where you sit relative to the frontier and the movement of the frontier, you can start asking, did it come purely from investing? Has there been technical improvement? And what has happened with respect to relative efficiency? Those are the questions. So again, what do we do here? We want to be a little rigorous about this, or as rigorous as can be possible, which means we run the data through the DEA system, and then we do testing. Why can we do it? Well, there's some theoretical background that justifies this can be done. So what do we get? We get support for 1A and 1B, which says there has been productivity improvement, and there has been a lot of technical improvement, a shift in the frontier. But the key is that if you start looking at relative efficiency, we start seeing that have people moved closer to the frontier? We don't see support. They've moved closer to the frontier. Now if we start looking at what the effect of awards are, what is the effect of awards? The hypothesis is that if you had won an award, you somehow did better than the rest of the industry. Okay, so that's the question. So for example, we start asking, we divide it up into sort of two segments, 93 to 98 and 98 to 2003, and we start asking, has there been a significant improvement in productivity for the firms with quality awards, the Deming Awards, etc.? Has there been higher technical improvement, and has there been technical change? And in all of those cases, you see significance. In other words, if you're looking for firms, and again, if you're looking at it as a procurement manager and you ask, who cares whether somebody won an award? Well, if somebody won an award, it provides a signal of their capability to take the inputs, convert them to output, to absorb technology, and to incorporate the technology in terms of improving their distance to the frontier. Now, all of these are significant things. In other words, this is, at least to the extent that the data tells us a story, the data tells us that significant change is happening, and that significant change translates into the ability to absorb technology. A lot of technology absorption is taking place, and to incorporate it in terms of improved productivity. Now, the interesting thing is, what is the difference between winning these awards versus getting certified? And those of you who know a little bit about the ISO certification process, the certification process doesn't necessarily certify the level of quality. It's not saying anything regarding the quality. It just says that you have the documents to basically justify what you do. Now of course, there was a little sort of UN connections to putting together the ISO standards, which means that everything goes as long as you know what you're doing. That's the certification. Again, we ask the same question with respect to certification, saying, does certification suggest anything? And basically it says that certificate firms do not show any advantage over non-certificate firms. So in other words, if somebody says, well, I'm ISO certified, you say, yes, good news, but I'm going to ignore it. That's probably worth doing. Then we sort of ask the same question regarding exports. And before I say anything, I must say that this is before this year. A big change is happening this year and over the next few years, where exports might potentially be a big change. And I'm sure we can have Jeff talk a little bit about that. But when we studied it based on the data through 2003, what we found was that exports per se did not show any significant impact. In other words, if you were exporting, that didn't give you the drive. If you had a bigger percent of exports, that didn't mean anything. Then of course, the question is now, do you make money doing this? Now, unfortunately, one of the things about this is that if you're an auto component firm and a study shows that you made money improving quality, what we hear is the very first phone call you get is from the OEM, which says, good that you won the award, now give me that 2.22%. What is the 2.22%? It's the premium you get for being a Deming firm. Okay? Now, this is what the data tells us, that it's significant, that all of this investment in improved processes and winning these awards and finding a better way to incorporate technology just does show itself in the marketplace at this point. Whether this is sustainable, I don't know. What's also curious, and this may be something where we academics being outside the box don't quite understand, we really found that the success story here is in the in the auto component firms being able to do the improvement and keep the margins. It's not that the OEMs have managed to squeeze them and take away the margins. Okay? Now, whether this will persist in the long run, I don't know, because what's happening at the OEM is sort of intense competition. Perhaps there's less competition in terms of the branded auto component makers. So what did we learn? And I think I have just a few more minutes before I conclude. Main thing is that Deming and other award winners showed significant improvements in productivity. Certification firms did not show any significant improvement. Exporters did not show any significant productivity. Award-winning firms are rewarded. OEMs did not seem to be able to drive down supplier margins. So that's really what we learned. There are a lot of open questions. Is this analysis at the country level useful input for a global supply chain manager? That's a fair question. How does an award focus differ from a certification focus? For some of you who run your companies, if you're setting sort of a mandate for your plant manager, a good mandate is to say, don't just talk about the fact that you're good. Go out and win an international award and show me that you're really capable. So, go out and, play with the big boys and show me you can do something. Is that worth it? And it suggests that it's a signal of many other things that might perhaps be worth it. One of the things that we're curious about, and we've been digging a little bit, I mean, we hear stories from the Deming companies. Incidentally, one of the connections is that some of the managing directors of these companies are alums of Purdue University and are Cranard. So we have a different connection. There's an ISB connection, there's a US connection, etc. And one question is a Japanese-style TQM a good strategy for transforming an Indian company? There's some argument that it is. I mean, it's sort of, we hear something anecdotal. I'm not quite sure. Some of these things are beyond sort of our purview, but I think there's a bigger question out there in terms of transformation that we don't know the answer to. And what are the market reactions to these firms? Now, here's something, and of course, I had to put this in because Sridhar insisted that I include this thing in here. And of course, you'll see that the font size reflects his preference. So, but this is the story, which I think is a nice way to encapsulate what we've been doing. And that is that we started off thinking about quality. And Sridhar told you that our initial goal was to study what's happening with quality. But we very quickly morphed into saying, look, it's not just this quality per se, but what its impact is on productivity. Okay, so then we started studying productivity. But then people say, it's not just the productivity per se, but it's really what talks about profitability. So if you really start saying, I want my firm to be more profitable, you're really at the end point. You're really at this one end. What you really need to do is go ask, how is it that the quality enables better incorporation of productivity and thereby profitability? Other questions that are actually, when we dig a little deeper, that are interesting is there sort of a long-run view to making investments in this Deming kind of a system, or is it a short run? And finally, can firms translate these gains into supply chain profitability and growth? And here we're talking about whether firms can extend their reach downstream of them to the second tier, third tier, et cetera, get these processes incorporated, and in general sort of improve the overall benefit of the industry. Thank you.
Innovation, or actually increases the innovation capability of organizations?
I think that's a great question. One of the things that I didn't include is we've also been developing cases about these companies. And in one of the companies, Rane Brake Linings, we spent some time studying what they're doing, at least as far as the Indian industry is concerned. And what we do find is that the processes at work, one of the things that they completely buy into at top management level is that the goal is to maximize customer satisfaction subject to financial return constraints. Now, given that framing, we actually have we mapped out what they did in terms of improving a design in response to a customer request. And there, all these processes kicked in. So my personal belief is that there is a difference between potential certification versus these Deming Award-like firms, in that the Deming Award-like firms focus on the business processes, and so it's sort of related to Ajit's statement regarding synchronizing all the pieces together. So one of the classic examples that we have in a case we wrote, which we're happy to share with anybody because it's in the public arena, is one in which there was a two-wheeler, there was a problem, and they took supply chain ownership. And if you look tick by tick, 20 days from the start of the request, there were 4 design changes and a modified design was delivered. So I believe that really, at least for foreign OEMs, that's their selling proposition, that we can jump on a dime and deal with you. So I think it's, rather than being counter to it, I think it enables it, at least as far as the Deming. I think certification, I'm not quite sure, but at least for the Deming Awards, it seems to be in the right direction. Okay, thank you.